We're here today with Sherry Wilson, a financial executive who's been in the industry for several years and handled lots of things operationally and on the technology side. Sherry, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you.
And wanted to talk about for just a few moments the whole contract negotiation process. And well, let's start with who really ought to participate in a negotiation with a vendor.
Well, I think first of all, I think it's important before you have that negotiation that the key members of the team, of a management team, sit together and talk about what the strategic goals are of the organization, what the vendor means, what you want or need from the vendor, time frames, things like that. But actually being in the room, I'm not sure that it makes sense to have an entire team in the room. In today's environment, a lot of negotiations are done either over the phone, some are done in some email, some starting points are done through email. And so you do want to minimize the amount of people and voices in the room so that the conversation can flow better. But certainly you definitely want key players, and you need people who understand the vendor involved and in the room, understand what the vendor brings and what you need and want.
So if I understand correctly, you're suggesting that pre-meeting is really important. So you get things sorted out amongst your team first.
Absolutely, 100%.
And then bring in the vendor and then have a single voice or a couple voices at most really work with the vendor to get to an end goal.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So let's move on to talk about the contracts themselves. What are some of the pitfalls that people should look out for when you're looking at a vendor contract?
Well, certainly you want to look at several different kinds of clauses. You want to look at term and termination clauses. How long do you have to give? How much notice do you have to give? What can you terminate for? And whether there's a renewal and whether it's automatic, and is that renewal for how long? You want to look at service level agreements. What are they providing you, and what are their guaranteed time frames, especially if it's a technical contract. You want to look at hold harmless language. You want to look at liability language. You want to look at their operating and what that vendor is allowed to do with your data. Certainly, and especially in our business, the financial business, you need a confidentiality clause and language, protection clause. Things like that are very important and can be pitfalls in a contract.
And why is that so important today?
Well, because data is everywhere today, and it's so available, and you have to protect your data, and you have to protect who's handling it, and you have to know who's handling and where they're located and what the regulations are around that. Very important for our industry especially.
How about the length of a contract? Is there a best practice when we talk about length of contract?
I think it is, especially it depends on the vendor and it depends on the service. If it is a contract for a vendor that can be, I'm going to use the word easily replaced, no vendor is easily replaced, but if it can be replaced within 6 months, then you can do a shorter term contract. 3 years, sometimes 1 year, especially if it's not a technology vendor. So if it's a core service provider and you need 18 months, sometimes 2 years to investigate other options and directions you might want to go, you might want to look at a longer contract. Something like a 5-year term might be a little better for something like that.
Gotcha. Why would anybody ever terminate a contract early?
Well, things change, right? Your direction, your strategic, what you decide strategically to do as an organization may change over time. Certainly on technology contracts, technology changes. What we looked at 5 years ago, what was important to consumers and businesses 5 years ago, is very different than what it is today. So you want to make sure that you either build in language that allows you to make sure that your partner, your vendor, is investing in research and development, investing in keeping up with or being ahead of the curve when it comes to preferences, consumer and business preferences, or you want language that allows you, if they're not doing that, to be able to back out and terminate that contract.
That makes sense. It seems like you wouldn't want to be stuck with a technology that might be obsolete.
Absolutely.
Especially if it's part of your strategic position in the market.
Absolutely.
Great. How about legal counsel? Should the institution really have the counsel review every contract?
I'm not sure a counsel is required for every contract. I think for significant contracts, for sure, whether it's new or renewals, legal counsel should be involved to make sure that the organization is protected in many ways. But for renewal contracts, and especially renewal contracts where it's not a critical or significant vendor, I'm not sure that legal counsel is a requirement. I think having legal counsel available to you to review contracts at all times is a good option. And organizations should plan ahead to make sure that they have legal counsel that's available and that has practiced what it takes to review legal contracts. So I think it's important to have that sort of in your back pocket, but not required unless it's, a new or a significant and critical vendor.
Okay, let's wrap up our session with one last question. You've been doing this for several years and very experienced at what you do. Any other points that you think are important for people to know?
I think the important thing is that understanding that a contract negotiation doesn't start at the time when it's time to negotiate the contract. It really is a matter of building that relationship over time, the rapport that you have with the vendor. That's critically important and something that I work very hard on. I think it's a matter of building trust. It's a matter of understanding that it's a collaboration. It's not a war, right? It's a win-win. You want what you need for the organization to move forward, and they have what they need. You need to understand them, the vendor, as well as they understand you. In a new contract, they will do their homework. Sales folks and vendors, they'll do their homework on you as an organization. You need to have as much due diligence. You need to do that on them as well. It doesn't hurt when it's a new contract to talk to other customers that use that vendor. For renewals, though, I work on building that rapport, having that trust, being open and honest, making sure they understand exactly where we want to be strategically, and making sure that they can help us get there. And to me, that's the most important thing. It's not people. I think people sometimes worry about negotiation, and negotiation is something we do every day. People don't even realize what are we having for lunch. That sometimes can be a negotiation. So negotiation is not a scary thing. It is all about relationship and trust and collaboration and making it a win-win for both organizations.
Sherry, great. We really appreciate your time today. Your wisdom and experience here is awesome. And we hope to do this again on a different topic, but thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.